My name is Ella Catherine with a K, K-A-T-H-E-R-I-N-E, Gates. And as I said, I was born in Abilene, near Abilene, Texas, on a ranch. And I don't remember it at all because before I started school, my father moved to Bakersfield with a family. And we did the same thing in Bakersfield, apparently we did in Texas. So there was another farm.
At what date, what was your birth date when you were born?
June 20th, 21.
Okay.
And as I said, I'm the 8th child in a family of 10. I'm the only one that's left. And my body doesn't know I'm 92 or going to be 92 because I haven't told the brain or the mind yet. I'm keeping that a secret.
Smart woman.
Yeah, and I'm still doing everything I did when I was much younger. I still go and do and enjoy life. Very, very happy person. Have many, many friends. Belong to 2 golf clubs, travel, just do anything I wish to do. I have a wonderful son, grandson. I have a great-granddaughter that's just turned 6, so she's keeping us quite busy. She just graduated from kindergarten.
Wow.
So that's fun. We didn't have any boys dominate in my family, so we were happy to get a girl as a great-grandchild. And my son was very successful. He's retired now. He's going to be 72 in October. And he operated hospitals for over 25 years. And he still is working part-time. He does counseling. He's working with 100 doctors right now, getting them organized. So they don't leave him alone, even though he's retired. And tomorrow he's leaving for Europe. He and his wife are going on a vacation down the Danube. So.
Sounds like you've had a wonderful life.
I've had a wonderful life. I've had a well life. I've had a wonderful family, both when I was growing up and since I've been married. And unfortunately, I lost Thurman when he was much too young, but we had a very, very happy marriage.
My name is Margie Moeller, and I'm currently a council member on, we call it a town of Yountville now, just because it sounded nice, and they changed that in the 80s from the city. So I am a council member on the town of Yountville Council, and I am very passionate about the history of Yountville, and this is something that we've been talking about for quite a while now, that we wanted to do, and we finally, when I met Mr. Moore and we had the facility up here to actually make it happen, I really wanted to kind of get this on record. And I think it's so powerful to, have this information for, there's all these interesting, like we've talked about, urban legends and myths that this happened, and to have somebody really set the record straight and give us, their personal opinions about what their goals and the dreams and what they were trying to accomplish at the time. It's no more or no less than, as you've told us, what it was and how you did it just on a day-by-day basis. So I think that this is really going to be an important piece for a lot of people to see and hear and learn about. So I personally would just like to thank you on behalf of everybody.
Well, you're very, very welcome. It's my pleasure. My pleasure, because I know it's something that not many people know. And have you interviewed the Delinskis yet?
No, they're on my list. I met with them last night, so they were a little reticent. And I said, well, we'll take it one step at a time. We'll show them this video, and then we'll talk again. So
yeah, I'd like to come when you have them. If you have something like this, I'd like to come.
I plan on doing that. So there are several key people in town that I think are all going to tell us about early Yountville that we don't really have much record of. And so I think it's a very valuable and important thing that we do for our citizens today and the citizens of tomorrow.
Yes, because it's something that's going to vanish if you don't have it, because it will not. Well, I'm real sorry that none of you knew my husband, because he was the first elected mayor of City of Yountville, and he was a jewel. I was actually born in the state of Texas, near Abilene, on a ranch. My parents owned ranches. And then part of his family, he was from a large family, and part of his family came to Bakersfield, California. He had 2 brothers there and 2 sisters. and they kept on hounding him to come. Well, we had a bad year in Texas. They depended on the rainfall there to grow their crops. They had no irrigation. And one year he had a beautiful crop, and the boll weevil came in and just wiped him out. And he said, I've had it. So he sold everything, packed up, and he said, two wee children, we're going to California. So that's why we came to Bakersfield, because we already had family there. And he did the same thing there. He was a farmer. And I grew up on a farm. And we kids, I'm from a large family of 10, 8 boys and 2 girls. And we all worked on the ranch. And as soon as we got old enough, we all left. And eventually my father and mother had to move to town because he said, I can't afford to hire people to do the work. So they moved to town, which was a blessing. They loved it. And then my husband is from a similar background. He was actually born in the state of Arkansas in the little town of Ozark, which is at the foot of the Ozark Mountains. And the Ozark River, Arkansas River runs through there. Very beautiful place. And he too, his parents were farmers. He was from a family of 8 and he was the 7th child. So when he was 15, he left home and he went to work for the Parks Department. They were building campsites and roads and that kind of stuff. Then when he was 17, he had finished a 2-year service, and he left and came to Bakersfield, California. His sister and a brother lived there, and that's how I met him. So I met him when I was 15, and he was 17. And we stayed in the same general company of people, and then we were married when I was 19 and he was 21. So that was our relationship. And we both were very independent people. We both started working when we were young and taking care of ourselves. And we did the same after we got married. We continued with that line. And then we have one son. He was born 15 months after we were married. And then before he was 3 years old, Thurman had to go in the service. That was during World War II. So then he was gone for about 2.5 years. And I went to work. I went to work at the administrator's office at the shipyards. We lived in Richmond for 17 years. And our son went only to 2 schools there, through grammar school, and then his high school. He finished there before he went to college. And we didn't move to that place here in Yountville until about a year after we bought it, because he was still a junior at high school and we had no intentions of taking him out. So that's when we went to work on the farmhouse.
So let's talk about your moving to Yountville. You were in Richmond at the time.
Yes.
And you decided to move to Yountville. So I don't know what year that was, but you can talk about that. So why did you move here? Why did you give up your jobs and decided, tell us about what business you started here. And I would love to hear about the farmhouse.
Yeah.
And you can tell us as much about that and the history of that as well. And also, after we kind of do that, one of the questions somebody else asked was that we had heard way back then that the county was prohibiting the construction of mobile home parks, and maybe you could give us any information about how you went about getting all the permits and starting that. So.
Yes, I will. Well, your guess is as good as mine, except for one thing. My husband was looking for a piece of property that had all utilities, and it had to be something that he could clear the land. He did not want any established, already something there that he was going to, because we had already been through that phase of repairing and that tender love and care thing. So we were going to have a piece of property that he could start new because he wanted to build a mobile home park. So we had a realtor in Richmond, and she had this listing in Yountville. The only thing we knew about Yountville is we went through it on our way to Clear Lake to take the Boy Scouts fishing and hunting and boating and all the stuff that they needed to do. We did not know a soul in Napa County or in the town of Yountville. So that didn't mean a thing to us. We knew nothing about it, and we didn't care anything about it.
So what year was this?
1959. And it was owned by 3 sisters. And I know you'd like me to remember all the names, but I don't. One was already in a nursing home in Berkeley. One lived in Oakland, and another lived in Berkeley, I believe. And I think one of the last names might have been Sullivan. I'm not positive. But we contacted them, and we made a deal to buy the 15 acres. And it was covered with prune trees and pear trees. And they were 75 years old. No one had lived in the house for over 8 years. I don't think it had been painted for 40, they told us. So it was falling apart. The porches were falling off, and everything was grown up around it. You hardly knew there was a house there. So that was our first project, was to get a place to stay while we started working on the project. There was also 14 eucalyptus trees along Hopper Creek, and they had been there probably for 200 years, they told us. So that took up 2 acres of the ground, and they are dangerous trees. You don't want to live under them or so forth. So we had a man here in Napa. His name was McDonald. He had 6 sons or something like that. They came up with their saws, and they took the trees down. They cut it into firewood. They sold part of it, and we sold the remainder. So then we went to work on Hopper Creek. Hopper Creek had berry vines. I guess it had been there for 200 years. So we cleared all that out. Then we had a backhoe come in and straighten it out because it was like a crooked snake. The water could not get through. So we did all that and opened up that so we wouldn't get any flooding. And then, as I said, it took us a long time because we only came up here on weekends and holidays, and we brought a bunch of workers with us. We brought people to work and help us with the house. We had to, part of the house had no foundation. We had to do that, and we had to go underneath because it was not level, and put in cement piers. And we did a lot of work on the house. And the inside we just didn't bother with at that time. But eventually we took the stairway out that was inside and put it outside, and we converted the top to an apartment. Because we did not, just he and I living there, we did not need all that room. And sometimes he was gone. He was a superintendent, and he would be running a big job like Moss Landing or down the south of here, and he would be gone from Monday till Friday night. So I would be there alone. And I had not lived in the country for a long time, and I didn't realize how dark and scary it was. So anyway, we finished an apartment upstairs, and we rented it to a man and a woman. So I had someone else on the place with me. Plus we had a dear veteran man that lived in a small house that was there, and he was around all the time, so made it rather peaceful. And because I was working, I'm retired from the state. I worked 23 years for the State Board of Equalization, and I ran the Napa office for over 11 years. And that's where I was working when we got incorporated. And they asked me to be the city clerk. And I said, that's going to take a little bit of consideration because I cannot afford to lose all my years' service with the state. My boss was in Santa Rosa. So I called him, and he started laughing. And he said, Ella, is this a night job? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, and how about the pay? I said, Mr. Sims, there's no pay. And he said, well, you just go for it. So that's the reason I did the first city clerk, actually. And I talked to the people here about it at the time. I said, isn't that a conflict of interest? My husband is the mayor, and you want me to be the city clerk? And they said, no, because we don't have anyone here that takes dictation, that types, that can attend night meetings. So I said, fine, I'll do it. And I stayed in that position until we needed to open an office part-time during the day.
Well, so let's go back since we're talking about that. So when you first came to Yountville, you started the mobile home cleanup.
Nothing but cleanup.
And then we can maybe talk a little bit about, putting the homes in and how that was to rent. And then maybe talk a little bit about, at the time, this was all unincorporated Napa County. So I heard
Yes.
you were very involved in the thoughts, and as well as your husband, in drawing town limits and incorporating the town. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Yes, we did not have this idea because he and I had other things going on. Living in Richmond, having a son getting out of high school and getting into college, and then getting this project going. First of all, we knew the tremendous amount of cleanup that had to be done. We just hired a dump truck to come out several Saturdays, and we completely filled it with cans, bottles, pieces of metal, anything that was there that nothing had been taken care of. There was a huge barn there. It had, I guess, 40 years of, I think there were 5 stoves inside. It was filled with stuff. They never took anything away. And then we had to get the trees taken down. We had to burn them and then level the ground, take those eucalyptus trees out. In the meantime, we had 2 commercial buildings out front. The one little building was leased before we bought the property, so we couldn't break the lease. And those people wanted a new building, so we built a new building for them. The other building we had to move back 10 feet or 20 feet because it was practically sitting on the road. So we wanted to do that. And you realize at that time that the highway went through Yountville. We didn't have the bypass. We did not have a stop sign in Yountville. We did not have any garbage service in Yountville. We did not have anyone in charge of anything, actually. The supervisor district, he was the only person that we could turn to for any help. He lived out on State Lane, and he was a rancher. His name was Andrew Fajani, which is a very popular name in Napa Valley, and he was a very nice gentleman. So but actually he knew nothing about towns or what should be done. So frequently nothing was done. And we had a gentleman in Yountville. His name was Jack Forster, and he was born in Yountville. His wife's name was Marion. He was absolutely fascinated with my husband. When we came there and started working, he was right there wanting to meet us, and he wanted to know what we were going to do, and my husband told him. He took a couple of steps backwards and he said, "Pardon me, what did you say?" My husband said, "I'm going to build a mobile home park." And he said, "It's going to be for seniors and no pets." And Jack's face got really, his eyes got big, and he stepped back again. He said, "Are you serious, Mr. Gates?" And my husband said, "Yes, sir." I'm very serious. So anyway, Jack came every time we were there. He was there, wanting to know what was going on and how we were progressing. This was before any thought of incorporation. And we actually got the permit to build the park before incorporation. Corporation had nothing to do with us building the park. But anyway, he said to my husband one day, he said, you think incorporation might help us in this area? He said, we're not getting anything done. He said, the streets are not paved, there's no sidewalks, there's no garbage service, we have very poor police protection. We do have the fire department here, but he said, I think we could do a lot better, don't you, Mr. Gates? And my husband says, well, I don't really know anything about incorporation. He said, I don't think my wife does either. But he said, I'm open to listening. He said, well, the little town of Martinez has just been incorporated. And there's an attorney, his name is Charlie Williams. And he said, I'm going to call him and see if he will come up and look at our area and see what he thinks, because that's his specialty. So he did. He contacted Charlie. Charlie came up on a Saturday, and Thurman and Mr. Forster showed him the area, and he looked around and he said, absolutely. He said, you people need to get incorporated. He said, you could have so much more for the people that live here, and you would be so much happier, and you'd be so much more controlled, and have someone to take charge of, like your cemetery and your park and your town and your streets, and your children are walking to school in the mud and wet and so forth. So we told him, well, just kind of get us started. So the first thing he said to us, you don't have enough population. I would say maybe the 400 people were in Yountville. I'm not positive. But we said, well, how's about the veterans home? You people had 600 up here. So he said, yes. He said, if we can get that incorporated in the city limits, then that would give you enough population. So that gave us the idea of getting started. Also, we formed a Yountville Improvement Club for the people that were interested. The Delinskys were very influential. We had bake sales, we had dances, we had anything we could do to make some money to pay for all this work that we were, the attorney and all this work that we needed to do before incorporation. And the people in the town, most of them were very receptive to this because they wanted better also. And Thurman and I went to every house in Yountville in the evening, knocked on the doors, talked to the people. We came up to the veterans home, we attended your breakfast meetings, we attended your lunch meetings, we attended anything. We went to the hospital, we talked to everybody that we possibly could to influence them to vote for incorporation. And the veterans homes actually saved our lives, because you people up here were already, you had your own fire department, you had your own police department, you had your own streets, you had everything under control up here. Yet we got the money for every citizen. So that's what made Yountville very prosperous. Yountville had never been in the red until you redid this new building, the community hall. Is that what you call it? Yeah, that's the first time.
The building we're in here, or the one in?
No, downtown.
Okay, right. That's the community
The downtown,
center.
the community center, yes.
Right.
That's the first time they were ever in the red.
So tell us about that a little bit. I'm kind of even changing my own plans here. So what buildings were there? Tell me a little bit about the school or the town hall or the community center. What buildings were around then, and where did you guys meet? You must have had a lot of meetings besides knocking on all the doors to incorporate, and you were, I'm sure, sending a lot of paperwork to Sacramento.
Well, I teased my son. He left for college and he didn't know it, but I said, he came home and he opened the door to his bedroom and he started yelling, "Mom, Mom, what is this?" I said, "Oh, don't get excited, it's only the city hall." I had the typewriter, I had the adding machine, I had papers everywhere, because when we incorporated, we had no building, we had nothing. And of course we used Mr. Williams's address plus our address for the mail for a few days. And then we contacted the Catholic Church. They owned the community hall. And they weren't using it for anything. It was just sitting there deteriorating. And they sold it to the city of Yountville for $10,000. And then we had to go in and remodel it and make a place for the city to have their meetings and so forth. And the only other thing, when we came to Yountville, as I say, I think perhaps there were 400 people. You had 2 grocery stores. The Linsky had one, and then the other in Tenascia. And then across the street from them was the service station, Lloyd's service station. I don't believe there was a restaurant there, but you could get a sandwich in some of the beer parlors. And they told me that there was 9 places that you could buy beer in Yountville. And the veterans came down, and they would hire, then taxis. I understand we had 40 taxis busy in Yountville when we came. They took the veterans out of town, around the hill there. There was an eating place. I've forgotten the name of it, but it was a good place to eat. But they also had liquor. Yountville could have no liquor. They could sell beer. And up here they only sold that 3-2 beer. It had a less content of alcohol than they sold downtown. So they came downtown, and they would go into these beer parlors and sit all day. Plus, across our property, when we bought it, there was 8 garages. Never been painted. They looked awful. And the church had 200 garages.
Wow.
And they rented these, as people did that owned our property, for about $5 a month. And these veterans, some of them put their cars in there, but very few did. They came down during the daytime, and they had these old garages, and they were in there drinking, and some of them had beds, and some of them had even cats and dogs, and it was a terrible mess. Very unsanitary. No bathroom facilities, or no heat, no electricity. So that was our first job. We demolished all 8 of those, and at that time we could burn, so we just put it out and burned it. And everybody in town said, "What's wrong with those people? They're losing income." And my husband said, "No, it's not a loss. It's not a loss at all." But anyway, and then every week when we came up, we took a wheelbarrow. We walked out across the front of our property, because these veterans would drink from these bottles. Usually they were pint bottles. Then they threw the bottles all over town. So we would take a wheelbarrow and go out and pick up the bottles in front of our property every Saturday morning or every Friday afternoon when we got up here, until my husband caught a few of them and kind of jerked them around and told them, "If I ever see you throwing a bottle here again, you're going to be in jail." So they kind of quit because they knew that we were cleaning up the property. But actually, like I say, the 2 grocery stores and the service station, I think was basically, there's a Rex Hotel. Lomita Miller, who served on the council, and her husband owned that. And I think you might have been able to get some food there and a room if you wanted to stay overnight. But actually, there was just very rarely.
And this is in the mid-60s?
Oh, that would have been in the fairly early 60s.
Early 60s, okay.
Yes. And I have shown you a picture from the sky of Yountville when we built, and it looks like nothing that it looks like today, because there just was a few houses, nothing in the back, and the mobile home parks weren't there, so forth. So, and we had to establish the boundaries. And we went back of our property because we had a small sanitation plant over past.
Still there, right?
Yeah, so we made that straight across. And the Beard family owned the property back of us, and they owned a lot of acreage, and it was vineyard. So we did not want to take them in. So we set the boundaries, and the Board of Supervisors told us, "Don't come back and ask to expand, because we're not allowing it. This is your boundaries now and forever." So I don't think that the city of Yountville has ever tried to expand its boundaries. It's the same boundaries that we set up. And then after incorporation, we told the church to take down these garages, which wasn't the most pleasant thing to do. But we said, otherwise we're turning you into the Napa County Health Department because this is unsanitary. So we got all those old garages torn down. And there were some other things in town that needed to be torn down, at the small buildings that were just rotting away and so forth.
So things were quite different back then.
They were quite different, absolutely.
They are now. So maybe let's talk a little bit about, we certainly talked about the veterans down and on that side of the highway, but what was really kind of going on at the veterans home up on this side of 29? Was there a lot of, had all the building been done, or was there a lot of building going on?
No, the buildings had been done. The buildings had been done, and so I don't know that all your buildings, I don't believe all your big buildings were full at that time, but there was work going on trying to improve them, because there were still a lot of World War II veterans that were trying to come in, that needed to come in. So some of your big buildings were in the process of being renovated, and the hospital was very busy at that time too. But other than that, we didn't know a lot about the veterans home, and as I said, really the city of Yountville didn't need to, because we didn't have to offer them any service, except we did want them to be able to come to town and be proud that it was a town and it was clean, and that they could come down and eat. They could bring their families down, go to the restaurants, or do whatever they wanted to do. Another interesting thing about it, after we moved here, one Saturday, a gentleman came to see my husband when we were working, and he was the person that owned a vintage 1870 building. And he wanted to know what my husband thought about an idea. Someone had offered him a great deal of money for the bricks in the building. And so he asked my husband, he said, "I'd just like your opinion." He said, "I know you're progressive and you're interested in real estate and buildings." And his name was actually Garcia, and my husband said, "Mr. Garcia, I know nothing about your building or what's around it, but," he said, "if I owned that building, I wouldn't be tearing it down." I said, "I'd be cleaning it up on the outside. I'd be making it look like it was something that was old and something that was of value." And it wasn't long after that until that started with vintage 1870.
Wow.
Yeah. We always thought that was very interesting.
Yeah. So, since there really wasn't much here in Yountville, did most of the people travel to Napa, or did they go to St. Helena, or?
You had to. You had no choice. I worked in Napa every day. Sometimes there would not be a car past me leaving Yountville to go to work in Napa. And then coming home, there might be 2 or 3 or 4 cars on the highway. And the highway was 2 lanes, one way each way. And I did all my shopping in Napa because I worked there. So during my lunch hour or after work, then I would go to the grocery store or to the department store or to the drugstore, different places, and do my shopping. And then when we built the mobile home park, we bought as many things from Knight's Lumber as he could possibly get for us, because we wanted to support him and support the town. So we did that.
Wow.
It was fun.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about, you talked a little bit about cleaning up Yountville, but all of us who've moved here, in the last few years to a decade or two, have always heard these stories about Yountville kind of being a true Wild West type of place, and a lot of the kids that grew up here, it was always kind of considered part of the other side of the tracks. Are those stories true? And what was it really like, kind of maybe compared to Napa or St. Helena?
Part of it was really true. I know people that lived in Yountville when I moved here. If you asked them where they lived, they said they lived in Napa Valley. And I went to work at the state board, and then when I came here, because I was transferred, and the people that normally come into the office every month or every quarter, the first time they saw me, because they had seen the same person there for many years, they wanted to know where I lived, and of course I spoke right up and said I live in Yountville. And they looked at me as if, Yountville? And I thought, what does that mean, you know? Because it didn't mean a thing to me. But so far as there being, there was no crime to speak of in Yountville. I don't know of anyone that was afraid to come to Yountville. It's just that it was just not taken care of. Like I say, part of the garbage in the streets, and the park area was just a grown-up piece of land. Cemetery was semi-taken care of, but mostly it was taken care of before the holiday. And just wasn't much there to attract anyone. But the thing that amazed me the most is when people would say they lived in Napa Valley rather than saying they lived in Yountville.
Well, we have certainly heard those stories, so thanks for giving us some background on that. So let's go back a little bit and talk about the incorporation of Yountville and forming a local government. You said you had were novices at doing this. So you told us a little bit about the expertise and how you kind of got going. But so once you got incorporated, did you have city hall meetings? Did you have to run elections to get
yes.
The council going? And
yes.
Tell us about some more what you can remember about that.
The attorney was to be notified in Sacramento when they approved incorporation. We failed the first time by a very few votes. I forget how many it was, but it was very few. So then we turned around and did it again, and we actually worked harder the next time. And so did the other people in Yountville. They worked harder to call on everyone. See, the people, elderly people in Yountville were afraid that we were going to raise their taxes, because we did have the authority to put in city taxes once you're a state. And we assured them that no, we would have enough money with the population to do the things we needed to do without putting in a large city tax. So that was just something they did not understand. And some of them did not want incorporation because they were making a living off of the veterans doing, as I said, some things that might not have been what I considered proper. So they didn't, I know the taxi people thought that something might happen to them, and so did the beer establishments. I think they thought that something might, because they probably knew that was going to happen. So there were people that were definitely, and they had a reason. It was part of their living. Most of the people that lived in Yountville worked here at the Veterans Home, or they worked in the industries in the little town of Yountville. And that was the only reason that people wanted to come there. Except my husband knew that if he built a mobile home park, that they would be coming there. He just knew that, so that's why we came to Yountville. It was strictly for the land. It had nothing to do with the incorporation or the city or any of that.
So how much did you pay for that property? If you don't mind me asking.
No, I'm not going to tell you. It was,
okay.
It's unbelievable. And people told us at the time, my husband, I got a kick out of him. On one Saturday he came up here, and there was a bar next to our place. And he said, I'm going over there and have a soda, and I'm just going to talk to the people that are in there. And he asked them, he said, what do you think about that 15 acres that's for sale there? Oh, that's way, way too high. That's far, far too much. That's all he heard from everybody that he talked to around there. So then he came back and he was telling me, and to us, after buying a city lot and after living in the city house, we had just built 3 new homes in the city of Richmond. We bought lots and built houses. Well, to us it was a bargain. But to hear these people tell him, oh, that's way, way too much. But that didn't faze him. He did offer the people less than they were asking, and they took it. And then he said, now, would you like me to pay you cash for this, or do you want a monthly payment? Well, as I told you, one girl was in a nursing home, and they said, no, we want a monthly payment, because that way we will have that coming in every month, and we won't spend it any other way but for her. So they opted to make us make payments, which we made to the bank. That's another thing. We didn't have a bank in Yountville. Everybody had to go to St. Helena or Napa to do their banking. So the minute we were incorporated, that was the first thing my husband had on the agenda. Let's get a bank in Yountville. And the other council people looked at him. Who's going to come to Yountville to bank? He said, lots of people will come to Yountville to bank. But we had a rough time getting a bank. We contacted the Bank of America because we had an account there. And they said, oh, no, we're not at all interested. And then the little group of people started and I don't know the name, Napa Valley Bank. They started that. There were about 5 people that got involved, and they built a couple of banks in Napa while we were working on all this, and so we got them to come there. And I still bank there. I went there today. I still bank there. And we invested in the bank ourselves. I still own stock in the bank there.
That's that West America Bank.
Now it's West America.
Now it's West America.
Yes.
Okay.
But we no sooner did the bank open than it was very busy. Very busy. They did a good job.
Your husband was correct.
Yes. I'll tell you another thing he said to me. We were having lunch one day while we were working on the property, and he said to me, I wish I had an extra $1 million. And I looked at him because I had learned by this time to be very careful, and I paid close attention. He said, I said, and what would you do with $1 million? He said, I would put a down payment on every piece of property in Yountville that would sell to me. Well, at that time, you couldn't get people to buy a piece of property in Yountville. And I said, really, would you do that? He said, absolutely. So he could see far beyond what was there when we came there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he was the first elected mayor, and how come they call him the first elected mayor? And then you told a little bit about you being the city clerk, but how was it easy to get council people to?
Yes, we didn't have any trouble with that, and it was mostly the people that worked on the Yountville Improvement Club.
Okay.
But when you become incorporated, you have a limited time to elect, to select a mayor to serve until you can hold an election. And we also had a certain time that we had to hold an election. So we appointed Mr. Capito, who was up here, the financial director of the Veterans Home. He had worked with us for incorporation. So we knew he knew a lot about financing. So we asked him to serve as a temporary until we could have an election. And then they put, I don't know how many names on the election ballot. Well, Thurman got the most votes, so then the men all said to him, well, then you must be the first elected mayor. So that's the way. And then the other people, they chose to change mayors to let everybody have a chance that served on the council. He served on the council for 12 straight years. And we merely quit because he and I wanted to travel. We had been confined all this time since our marriage and with a child and college and all this. So we wanted to travel. And so that's why he got off the city council.
So were you able to have enough money to hire staff to
Yes.
help run the city?
Yes.
And where did all that money come from, the taxes? Maybe you can talk a little bit about
The state will loan you money when you become a city until you can get established. And that's what they did with us. And then within a certain time, you start receiving money for every registered voter that you have. So they knew that their money was secure. So they loaned us enough money to I suppose we probably bought that building before but they appropriate that money to you within a certain period of time. And then once you become incorporated, you have to have a lawyer there. And he already had all these things prepared because he had done it for Martinez. You have to have all these resolutions. And we had to contact the fire department, and we had to contact the police department within a certain length of time. So we did get the state of California to continue to represent us, and we got the County of Napa Sheriff's Department to be our representative as the police protection. So we had to do that within a certain length of time. He and I worked well into a day and a night getting all these resolutions that were compelled by the state at a certain time to then we started looking for a building because we needed a place to meet rather than someone's house.
So let's just talk about that first building a little bit and how that kind of came about. Then maybe we can take a break a little bit.
Well, yeah, like I said, the only big enough building that we felt that we could serve was this community hall owned by the Catholic Church. And of course, you don't get the Catholic Church to do anything by a snap of the fingers because they have to go through a lot of steps. But that was our first thing, and we also had a brand new priest here. It was his first time. His name was Clary. And we got him busy working on that to help us to get the Catholic Church to say that they would sell that building. And had they been using it, they probably wouldn't have sold it to us, and then I don't know what we would have done. But that's how we got that building. And we couldn't move in there right away because it just wasn't suitable. We had to start in working, and we fixed a small room and stuff for the council as quickly as we could. And we had to hold meetings, I guess, once a month or whatever.
Did people come? Did the public come? And
Not really. Not really. No.
some things never change.
Before
Corporation, there wasn't, I want to talk about the services and
All right, so maybe
utilities
this is a good
in
time
town.
to
There
take
wasn't
the-
any garbage collection. And what do you remember about how water and sewer, do you really know how much about utilities? You can tell us how that worked?
Well, we received water from Rector Dam, and then we had our own little sewer plant over there. And as I said, there was no garbage service. There were lots of streets that were not paved. There were absolutely no curbs most places. There were no sidewalks most places. And when it rained, the water just poured down the different streets, and the kids had to walk across in the mud going to school and so forth. So that was one of the first things we did. And another thing we did, I was working for the State Board of Equalization, and at one time, part of my half day I served on the Liquor ABC Board. So when we became incorporated, we notified everyone that owned a alcoholic beverage sales place that we would be having investigators come, and anyone that was selling to a veteran that was either drunk or that was disabled and unable to take care of himself, and they were selling him liquor, that they would be cited and they would be losing their license. And of course, everybody already knew that I worked for that department, so they took that very seriously, which they should have, because that's exactly what we did. And and that's what the board does, the state board does. We have agents that they'll just be plain dressed, and they'll go into different bars and buy a drink or talk to people, see what's going on. And so that helped straighten out Yountville very quickly. Then also we talked to the manager here at the Veterans Home. We told him that a lot of these fellas that came down there were alcoholics. They did not need to be down there. It wasn't for their safety or our safety. That he was going to have some control over the veterans and keep them up here if they weren't capable of taking care of themselves when they were off the grounds. And he was also very cooperative. So those two things changed Yountville within a month.
Wow.
And we had several people that, of course, went out of business because they had no business. We took that, but we had to take those steps. And we didn't want any more veterans killed. There were several veterans killed on the road and stuff like that. And be there all night, and they'd be missing, and they'd have to come and pick them up. And that's what we told the administrator here, that if we find anyone that's drunk and out on the street, we'll have him put in jail, and it'll cost quite a bit of money to get him out of the Napa County Jail. So that stopped a lot of it right away, and that helped Yountville. Also, the Yountville Improvement Club, we advised everyone in Yountville, clean your yards, paint your houses. Let's get everything looking nice in this town. Let's make it a place that everybody will be happy they live here, be proud of the way it looks. And I'm telling you, just like the snap of the finger, it started happening. It was such a pleasure to us, because that's the type of people my husband and I were. That's what we started doing. We first cleaned up the front of our property and started working on the house and just everything, and it really made a difference in the town of Yountville.
Great, it's like infectious. So what can you tell us, even in the last 10 years, we've had a couple pretty big-sized floods, and we've got a lot more flood control in now. Did this area flood a lot when you were here, or is there anything you can tell us about that?
When we bought that property, it was actually in a flood zone, and we weren't told. We did not know that. We had no idea that was. But we were flooded twice in the Gateway Mobile Home Lodge, but never serious. It got in our streets, and it got up onto the sides of the mobile homes, and it ruined some of their skirting. But we had nobody had water actually come into the mobile home, and it was basically the back portion. But that happened to us twice, and the park next door to us, they really were swamped. They got up in their houses. And
that was Rancho de Napa.
Yeah, Rancho de Napa.
So they had the problem and not you.
Yeah, we had the problem, but nothing like they did. Tore down some of our fencing and stuff like that. And we had mud in the streets, which we had to clean up. But actually, we were very fortunate. We didn't have anyone that was flooded. Definitely was a problem.
Okay.
And the reason being that the problem comes from up above us. It always will, from Lake County coming down, because they don't keep their streams clean, and they don't take care of certain things where the water could be drained. We did not have this big ditch going from Napa out here that goes all the way to Napa. So at one time I couldn't go to work because I couldn't get across the road. So then the county took care of that and put in that, and that really helped to drain the Napa. And then, like I mentioned, Hopper Creek at most places was just crooked and not taken care of. So that helped. We saw that other people then had to do that. And that took care of some of our problems, but flooding is something I'm afraid is never going to be taken care of until everybody above us does a little more, even in the city of Napa.
That's true. So also, right around that time, there was another very historical event going on within Napa County, and that was the implementation of the Ag Preserve.
Yes.
And that must have been very controversial.
Yes.
Maybe you could talk about your thoughts and what was going on and how that came about.
Yes, but we people that really were interested in what happened in Napa County knew this was a good thing, because we had just seen what happened around the San Jose area, where all the orchards were taken out and houses were built. So, and also me with a farming background, I knew that farming to me is better than a housing district. So the city of Yountville was in favor of the Ag Preserve. And also, we didn't have much farming within. The Bartasonas had grapes. Both of the boys had grapes there. But we didn't have a lot of farming within our little confined of Yountville. So that part wasn't a major thing to them. And also at the house, we were talking about the house. some people said that part of that house was moved there. That was never mentioned to us. And we saw no indication that that house was ever moved there, other than just being built there. It might have been, but when we bought it in 59, and there was a picture of it in 1896, and it looked the same at that time. I don't believe back before that time there was house movers that could have gotten that house down there from someplace else. So I think the house was probably just probably a 2-bedroom house to begin with, and they just kept adding on to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I could be wrong, I don't know. But that's just the way my husband and I looked at the building when we were repairing it. We couldn't see that it had ever been drugged there and built onto there, so.
Okay, that's interesting. So also, there's been quite a bit of changes in terms of the main streets and the bypass being built.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how,
Well,
29, as we know, it came through town, and how the bypass came to be built?
Well, a lot of people were not in favor of doing that because they liked the people to come through town. Some people would stop, and some people would come up this way to the Veterans Home, because we didn't have anything else up here, actually. We didn't have the museum, and we didn't have the restaurant. So the Veterans Home would be the only reason they'd turn off. But the people, the city council itself, they felt that was a good idea, because we were getting a lot more traffic than we had when we first came here, when they built the bypass. And it was, we didn't have a stop sign in town, so the city council felt that it was a good thing for the city. It would allow us to grow and be more quiet and more peaceful. They ran through there at night, and even though there was a speed limit, they didn't pay attention to it, and all we had was the county sheriff's office. They couldn't be everywhere. So we were definitely in favor of getting the road moved.
And so what year was that bypass built?
That I don't know. I don't
Okay.
remember. But it was quite a while after we bought the property.
Okay.
Quite a while.
So when Yountville was incorporated, do you remember who was the commandant who was in charge up here at the Veterans Home in the mid-60s?
No, I do not.
Okay.
No, I do not.
Just had a couple more questions. And so at the time when you incorporated, everybody had water and they got it from Rector. But did it come from the Veterans Home, or did you have pipes that all came in from a central location that provided water to all the residents? Do you remember how that worked?
No, I don't know how that worked. We did not have any water storage tanks there, so I don't know just how that. I just assumed we had pipes. But later it was switched up here to the Veterans Home. But I thought when we came there, we were told it was just from Rector Dam. In fact, we had some dealings with Rector Dam. So.
And you had to deal with the state?
Had to deal with the state. Mm-hmm.
To get the water.
Mm-hmm.
So another question that I've heard many people mention was back in the 60s that Yountville was going to grow eastward all the way to Silverado Trail. Did that ever happen, or is that just a myth?
That was never thought of or never mentioned in the city council. Because as I told you, when we incorporated, the Board of Supervisors made it very plain. You are not going to extend your dimensions. This is what it's going to be. So don't come to us, because we're not doing it. And I said, Mr. Beard, the Beard family owned a huge, from the river clear back to our place, there's a huge, and it was all vineyard. So, and that already the agriculture was there. So we never had any intentions of extending any of the limits while I was there.
So let's talk about some of the stuff that a lot of us who live here now, are familiar with, but we really don't know much of history, and maybe you can have some. I've gotten some questions from some people. People would like to know about the Schmidt family that owned the French Laundry. The French Laundry, if you're walking around town, you're very likely to be asked by someone driving by, where is the French Laundry,
Right.
so we'd like to talk about
Right.
that. We also, what we consider quite unique to Yountville, all of our stop signs and major street signs we have, we put wood around them. We don't really know where that history started.
I have
maybe.
no idea about that.
So, and the Yountville school. So maybe you could talk about, did you know the
Of course, I
Smiths
had
or
no
the
children
school?
in school, and I really wasn't very interested in school, and it was a rather small school. And it's where you now have the city hall?
Correct.
Yes. And basically, that's all I know about the school. I don't know anything about the school.
Okay.
But what was the first one you asked?
No, the French Laundry,
The French-
as we
well,
know, and the Smith family.
The Smith family, they were part of the first group that bought the vintage 1870. And then Sally, that's his wife,
Right.
she started the restaurant in the kind of the back of the French Laundry there, and was very successful. And he served on the council for many years. And then they got the idea of buying the property for the French Laundry and to going into her having a bigger and a better restaurant. And when they came here, I'm sure that that was not in their mind at all. But,
So her original restaurant was in
in
1870?
1870 at the
Okay.
back.
In the back of that.
Mhm. And she was very successful. And they were both very nice people. As I said, he was on the council for years, and we worked with both of them, my husband and I.
So I would just kind of like for you maybe to take some time, and you're still coming to Yountville frequently. I see you around town, and you
Oh,
don't
yes.
live very far away.
Yes.
And a lot has really changed over
Oh,
that time.
it's-
So kind of reflecting back to, you've talked about where you started and where we are now. So the reason you wanted to kind of start the local government and where we are now, maybe can you just give us your opinions and your thoughts on that?
Well, as I said, the main reason was to be able to get the services that we felt we needed and to help, I think, the children. The fact that we didn't have sidewalks, we didn't have curbs, we didn't have part of the streets even paved, that they had to get out in the weather to walk to school in the mud. I think that was what prompted a lot of the people in the Yountville Improvement Club, that they wanted to improve that. And we had no garbage service, which was awful. Some people burned their garbage. Other people took it different places. And that just wasn't acceptable. Just was not an acceptable place for us to live right away. We were really, when we finally did get going and got a little bit settled here, we thought, yes, there's something needs to be done here. And even, as I said, Jack Forster being born and reared here, he knew that something needed to be done. And we definitely needed to get the properties cleaned up. We needed to inspire the people to do something with their own living environment. That the yards were weedy, the houses were unpainted, and we were getting people here that paid very little rent, and we just needed to upgrade with the park, there was no park there, it was just a bunch of bushes and leaves and trees and everything like that, so we needed to get that done. Because a lot of people did come to the cemetery, that's kind of a known place, and we wanted to get that improved.
So now when you walk down the street
Yeah.
and you see all the hotels and the restaurants and the visitors that we have come to town, you can come here any day. I mean, was this something that you could ever have foreseen?
No. Thurman did, because like I said, he told me what he would do. But no, I could not see that at all, and I wasn't even looking for it because we were so busy with what we were trying to do and to get our own business going and so forth, that I could not see that at all. Just couldn't see it. And they did take out part of the, like the Bartasones have sold part of their land, and they have housing in there now. And then Jack Forster had 10 acres of vineyards back there, and he put in the house in there. So there's been a lot of housing gone in since we first came here. And then, of course, the other mobile home park, that takes care of a lot of housing.
Right.
He came over and teased my husband and I, said, I'm just going to extend my streets right on over. My husband said, no, you're not going to do it that way. But it was fun.
So when you kind of reflect back, I'm sure there was some parts that were really hard and challenging for you, and probably some stuff that was maybe a little more fun. Does anything kind of come to mind that you really want to share with us right now about
No,
the
I don't
highs
think
and
it
the
was.
lows?
I don't think it was much of a challenge. It's just something that once we got here and we talked to the people and met the people, that we realized what needed to be done, and we did it. And there's not many people that would have taken that much of their time that people did in order to become incorporated. Because if we had not done what we did, put out brochures, put out literature, go to people, talk to people, it just wouldn't have happened. It never would have happened. And I don't think any of it was a big surprise once we got going. And then once we did get incorporated and we had Charlie Williams as an attorney, he's so very, very good. And I was just telling the lady that he has a place at Silverado, and I see him quite frequently. Yeah, and he always has to talk to me, of course, when we see each other. So it's fun to see him.